Tonight we've got Ray Black to speak on the power of copywriting, and
talent and doesn't learn to persevere. So bear that in mind, because it'll save you a lot of tearful nights when you come home from an interview and you feel that you've been totally rejected and you can't stand another rejection. Keep at it. So really tonight will be much more in the form of a chat than a lecture. A lecture sounds a bit pontificating. So it'll be very much a conversation, which should probably last about a half an hour, at the end of which we can have some questions. So I do expect some questions. So just put them in the back of your mind as we progress. What's the first lesson in writing? And that's really what it's all about, okay? You will write better when you've got something to write about. Now you've got to think about that for a moment, because a lot of people start off writing and then they don't really have enough to write about, and they write a lot of bloody waffle. And that's what it ends up to be. What you should do is know as much about the product as the man who made it, and the ideas will jump into your arms. And knowing as much, you can actually know more. And I'm quite serious about this. With what you've got now in your hands is the ability to tap into CompuServe or internet to get the latest on the particular product or the category. So you can access information like the client is only starting to think about, and you can actually know more about the whole industry and the product than the guy who made it, the guy who's selling it. The other thing too is the written brief is really never enough. The written brief should only be the basic specification for what you're about to do. If you accept that as being the only resource that you'll be writing to, you're going to write some very transparent stuff, and you'll try and wing it with, you know, a kind of a jokey headline or a funny picture or something which is pretty facile, but pretty bloody useless. And the other thing is ask questions. Don't sit and just take it in. Ask as many questions as statements you're given. It's because it's only by asking questions will you really stumble across some amazing things. Because what you might find is gold, the client or whoever's briefing you might just overlook as too commonplace. But your instincts will guide you that fact is absolutely magic, and you can do something fantastic with that. So ask questions. Take a notebook wherever you go. And I think the thing is too, is don't be too sort of Stalinist about being a writer, okay? You're really in the business of solving communications problems. So take a much more holistic view of it, and that is that you should see things visually as well as in words. And that way you'll be a better writer, and probably a better art director as well, if that's the way you're going to swing. I think I'm getting a bit of feedback. Am I getting feedback on that? Sort of echoing or something. Okay, but whatever you write about, write from the point of view of the reader, and that is not from the point of view of the advertiser. Typical advertiser copy is, we do this, we care, we're fantastic, written from the point of view of the advertiser. Write from the point of view of the consumer. And I don't need to spell that out, I think you know what I mean there. Put yourself in the position of the consumer and empathise with the consumer after you've known a lot about who this person is, and then write from that point of view. You'll have much stronger copy. As soon as you can, get organised. When you decided that you're going to get organised, the next thing you do is convince yourself you are going to solve the problem. Because if you get the terror of the white page situation, you will end up in some anxiety spiral out of which you will never recover. You have to convince yourself you're going to find the answer, or some wonderful idea will find you, which is another interesting thing to think about. It's very arrogant to think that we go out and find ideas. If you just be a little bit more relaxed about the whole thing, you might find that in more cases than one, the idea will kind of find you. But you've got to get yourself organised into a situation where where you can encourage this happening. So first of all, you've got to reject the deadline anxiety feeling, because if you start panicking about deadline, you're not going to let your mind be open and receptive. It's just going to close down. You're going to go into panic mode, and you'll end up bashing out something that you'll hate. Also, part of getting organised is to complete your homework. And that is to do all the questions, the answer, go out and find out how they make the widgets, who makes the widgets, why the widgets are that shape, what makes these widgets any different to other widgets. None of which might end up being useful, but in this sort of cross-examination, this investigative journalism style, something might pop up in front of you. Inevitably too, if you're stuck on a problem, almost without exception, if you've got a dead spot, you can't seem to get a handle on it, it's probably because you don't know enough about it, whatever it is. So go back and just have a think about it and talk some more, and then these things will occur. Another thing under getting organised is the value of rituals, what I call the value of rituals. And there's certain rituals with a lot of things that, and you'll discover in this industry, that the ritual is sometimes more important than the end result. And on the distasteful subject of cigarettes, one of the most important things for a cigarette smoker is taking off the cellophane around the packet of cigarettes. It's that little strip thing, and taking off the cellophane, opening the top and the silver foil, all that kind of ritual stuff, okay? Rituals are very important. So rituals are very important when you're writing. Different strokes for different folks. Some people put on some music. I've heard of someone actually wears a fireman's hat. Somehow they impart some sort of magic, or maybe it's the metal that sort of has some sort of strange antenna that sucks out all the great ideas ever thought about in the world. Another good thing is actually staring out the window. This is really good, because don't ever be self-conscious about staring out the window. I do it quite a lot. You can consider it as inducing a trance-like state, which which relaxes you, okay? And once again, it's a mechanism to get rid of the old anxieties, okay? How can you be anxious if you're sitting there looking out the window, staring, unblinking, you know, looking at whatever happens, okay? So really, I'm quite serious. It's a valuable technique, because when you allow your mind to kind of go into a neutral state like that, ideas will start popping in. And those who have done meditation will probably be a bit more sympathetic to that notion, because this is what can happen under that sort of semi-self-hypnosis condition. The other thing, of course, is lucky socks. Some people when they've got a presentation or something really important, they don the lucky socks. It's a bit like Linus's security blanket. But all of these things are to do with conditioning yourself to be receptive to ideas. And there's some of them even more bizarre than that, but you'll develop your own little thing. So don't discount the value of rituals when you've got that alphabet in front of you. I think copywriters are basically, good copywriters are very good organised people. I mean, their desks may not suggest that, or the manner in which they dress or whatever, but basically they're pretty organised people. And they need to be organised because they need to tell a story much quicker and much more economically than a journalist. Now, journalists tend to have a love-hate relationship with copywriters, because, you know, we're crass and we're commercial and we earn about 100 times more than they do, which is possibly why they don't like us. But I don't want to knock journalists, but journalists find it a little bit difficult to come into copywriting because they're so used to writing scads of copy and not the essence of ideas. A journalist will probably take me to task on that and write me a 5,000-page letter on it. But believe me, it's true. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, if there were some exceptions, I'd sort of be a bit less ruthless with that idea. Good copywriters, that I've observed over the years, they read everything. You know, I mean, sure, this has got emphasis on print, and I'm doing this quite deliberately, because otherwise, if I start jumping around to radio, to television, to print, it'll get confusing. So I'll stick to the principles of print, okay, in the main. So read everything you get your hands on. There we go. Read this sort of stuff, okay? Adventurous writers. I mean, read Daniel Steele, all that sort of Jackie Collins, read all that. That's all crap. I mean, it's all, you know, interesting crap, I suppose. But this is good crap. And also stuff that's off the wall, you know. And I don't think anyone's further off the wall than Spike Milligan, but he's got such a wonderful way of describing things and telling you stories. Quite an unconventional writing style. And you should absorb this. Hands up who's read this. Henry David Thoreau, Walden. Okay? Now that's all right. Don't feel guilty that you haven't. Now's your opportunity to do it. And it's actually there are two books in one here. The second one's about civil disobedience, which I'm sure you don't need any encouragement on that one. But the first one, these two little books, all in one, were written around 1845. And Thoreau sort of, I guess, was a bit like a hippie at that stage, because what he decided to do was to get out of civilization and go and live by a mill pond. I think it was in Virginia, and live as a hermit. And the book consists of his observations of the passage of the seasons and the animals that came and went, and just observing. Now, it's a wonderful book. It's short for a writer to read and for an art director, because art direction also has probably got a little bit more to do with observation of things around you. 1845, but absolutely fantastic on observation, because people look but they don't see. I think you know what I mean there. Everyone can look, but few people bother to see. What else have we got here? Tom Wolfe. Now, I'm sure you've certainly heard of this guy, and I'm sure you've read some stuff of his. But once again, he's such a... his writing style is so fast and so inventive. And we're just chatting a little bit before we started tonight, and I just sort of talking about, you know, I guess the magic that you can weave with 26 letters of the alphabet and throw in 10 digits. Just with those little things, you know, I mean, 36 characters, you can do wonderful things. Now, I don't know whether you can read that, but it says a candy-coloured tangerine flake streamlined baby, okay? This is a page out of it, okay? Chapter 1. Las Vegas? What? Las Vegas, can't hear you, too noisy, Las Vegas. And the first paragraph consists of hernia, 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 hernia. Eight's the point is 8, hernia, hernia, hernia. So what he's saying here is, as you get down the bottom here, Raymond's talking to the wavy-haired fellow with the stick, the dealer at the craps table, and that's how dealers at craps table talk, hernia, 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 hernia. Okay, but all I'm saying is, it gives you a great understanding of he's observed and he's looked and he's seen what happens. And who would have thought to write a bit of copy, for that matter, that's okay, it's out of a book, if you could write a copy, and half of it was just one word. But if it's the right one word, you know, you're being really different, you're being fresh. Also, read what the critics have got to say about what we do. It's interesting, you know, if you're in advertising and you're at a party or something and someone says, oh, hey, what do you do? You say, oh, I'm in advertising. And you think, normally, you say, oh, shit, you know, I should have said something safe, because otherwise I'm going to be harangued for the rest of the night. But don't be ashamed of it. Say, I'm in advertising. Puff your chest out and say, oh, I'm in advertising. And then let them rip at you, and they'll say, I think advertising is the biggest bloody rip-off and full of charlatans and wankers and so forth. And know what you should say then? Say, you're absolutely right. They've got nowhere to go. So read what the critics have got to say about the business. Even this one, 4 arguments for the elimination of television. It was printed, I think, in the late 60s, was talking about the new advertising. And the new advertising, I mean, even at the time, was considered revolutionary. Those two campaigns are referring to there, Avis and Volkswagen, are quite famous, and I'm sure you will have seen or heard a lot more about those two campaigns, so I won't labour that point here. But if you haven't, find as much as you can out about the background to both those campaigns and learn about what great writing is all about. Another book which you definitely cannot read the title of, it says The Art of Writing Advertising. And these are conversations with people like William Bernbach, Leo Burnett, David Ogilvy, and so on. And it's quite extraordinary, you know, what... and that book was also printed about the mid-60s. And the stuff in there is still absolutely gold-plated truth, and it's totally applicable to today. Which is also interesting because these principles of what really is great and fresh and original prevail. It's only how we interpret them from year to year that is a little different. Right. Also encourage your curiosity. I mean, you've got to be, yes, everyone knows that people in advertising are curious, but you've got to develop your curiosity for things. And you've got to have an interest in, you know, how they make carpet, you know, what sort of lighting this is, all of that. You've got to have an interest and curiosity in things, because through your curiosity, you'll file away wonderful facts and things that you will use at some stage. It'll just pop out. Also, good writers are always good listeners. And one thing in advertising is it's hard to find a good listener because everyone wants to talk. And in meetings, if you've got 6 people in a meeting, there's 6 of them will be talking and all at once, and no one's listening, okay? But if you develop the art of being a good listener, you'll be amazed that other people will think you're a fantastic conversationalist. Because you've allowed them to talk. If you allow them to talk, you're going to find out good stuff that you're going to be able to apply in your writing. So don't underestimate the real value of being a damn good listener. Because good copywriters are not word mechanics. They're observers of the human condition. You may not realise it, but afterwards when you sit and think about this thought, you'll realise how true it is and how true it will become, and that is that all the major decisions you will make in your life will be made on an emotional basis and not logic. And you think of all the important decisions that you have and will make, they'll be made emotionally. Okay, what's that tell us? It tells us, shouldn't scare you, because you shouldn't devalue emotions and then give an undue importance to logic. You should, in this business of being a writer, you should trust your feelings. Okay, this might sound a bit kind of ugga-mugga, but the more you trust your feelings, the better they will work for you. That's coming back to what I was saying earlier. Just kind of open out, don't close up and only allow little bits of information to sort of come towards you. Just sort of open it up, go into stare mode, you know, look out the window. Trust your feelings. What do you feel about the situation? I mean, this is not a new thought, too. I mean, the Greeks, ancient Greeks, believed in this, and they felt that all of the good stuff, you know, poetry, music, art, and the philosophers, they wondered, you know, where the hell does this come from? Okay? So they had to put a rational view forward, and they felt the muses, M-U-S-E-S, the muses gave it to you. Okay? I mean, they might be right. And these were people who encouraged musicians and poets by vibing these things to them. So that was the Greek's explanation to it. So I'm translating that into current terminology, and that is just simply trust your feelings, and these things will come in. Feelings will encourage you to be fresh and original, and that's really what most of the writing in the business kind of lacks. It's just sort of tired and stale and just boring. Okay. And there have been studies on this, and current betting belief is that 85% of ads are never noticed. They're not disputed or argued over. They're just simply not noticed, and that's the worst thing of all. As I was saying before, just think holistically about communication. Think visually as well as literally. Coming back to this logic, it's interesting that the Japanese don't rate logic as important to the thinking process. It seems to be much more of a sort of an Anglo-Saxon Celtic thing to place so much importance on logic. Because logic can lead you into writing an information document, okay, and that's fine if that's what you're going to write, but it won't really allow you to write copy that will enthrall, amuse, move, or motivate. Feelings, facts have feelings. A statement about a product, a surprising thought, or I've got everything to do with, I think, feelings more than facts. Here's something that some of you may have seen, but those who haven't, I think this is a wonderful piece of writing that has great feeling. And I think those who wish to be a good writer might get something out of this next piece. There was once a blind man who used to beg at one side of Central Park. He sat there with his hat on the ground, ready to receive any donations. He also had a sign which read, "I am blind." One fine morning in early spring, a copywriter passed by on his way to work. He bent down, wrote something on the sign, and passed on. That evening, he passed by again on his way home. "How was your day?" he inquired of the blind man. "Fantastic," came the reply. "Never done so well. What did you write on the sign?" "Oh, I added a few words to your sign, so it read, 'It is spring, and I am blind.'" That's a writer. 3 words makes the difference. I know when you've written your copy, you'll feel so proud of it. You want to show it to your mum. You want to take an extra copy of it to put in your folio. But what you should do is take what you've written, if provided that you've got things that are in a logical sequence or they're basically how you want it. And then there are certain things that you should do. And that is that, this is an oldie but a goldie, but a good test is, can the copy survive? Will it be tighter? Will it be better if I elbow the first paragraph? Because often or not when you're writing copy, you start fiddle-diddling around and that first paragraph, and then you start to get into it, okay? Just put a piece of paper over the first paragraph and see how the copy reads from the second paragraph, because that's really when you start to get down to business. Another little thing you should try is just edit out every second adjective. Because a lot of people sort of throw in adjectives, like a winter sail. And you say, well, why would I want to do that? I mean, adjectives are nice and colourful and flowery and so forth, but hold on, the idea is getting ideas tight and quick and fast and lean and getting to the point. And also be swift with the telling of your ideas. I mean, don't dawdle about it. Don't be a journalist, sort of take 3 bloody columns to get to a point, if there's one at all. Just get there. If what you're writing is short copy, you know why it needs to be short copy. This comes into the old question of should it be long copy or short copy. I mean, well, what you've got to do will determine that. And often not, it's self-evident that if it's a long copy, if it's going to be long copy, it needs to be long copy because that's really what it needs. But nevertheless, if it's long copy, ruthlessly edit it. On this point of these disciplines that I'm kind of reeling out, is that I remember this is Bryce Courtney talking to Bryce about his book, The Power of One, and he said that he believes that copywriters make great novelists because their discipline is such they have to describe things so economically and so tightly and so comprehensively, and that's what we're taught in this business. Not to dawdle, get to the point, enthrall, move, motivate. And he puts a lot of the success to his writing down to 30 or 40 years of copywriting discipline. And even getting started on a book. And he said, well, how I started the book was with the thought, the short sentence, this is how it began, full stop. And then he started. So, and his description was on that first page of a meal that was served, and I won't tell you what it is, but you read it and the visuals are so magnificent, but expressed in so many few words. Now, I'm going to actually show you an ad. The penalty of leadership. Now, I'm going to have to read this to you as well, I'm afraid to say, because it's such a long copy thing. This ad was written about 1915, and the thoughts expressed in it are as valid today as they were the day they were penned. You also might note there is no logo in it. It was actually written for Cadillac. I think I've got the guy's name. I might find the guy's name. It doesn't matter all that much other than from the point of giving the guy credit. No, you can't read that. I'll read it. Okay, it says, in every field of human endeavour, he that is first must perpetually live in the white light of publicity. Whether the leadership be vested in a man or in a manufactured product, emulation and envy are ever at work. In art, in literature, in music, in industry, the reward and the punishment are always the same. The reward is widespread recognition, the punishment, fierce denial and detraction. When a man's work becomes a standard for the whole world, it also becomes a target for the shafts of the envious few. If his work be merely mediocre, he will be left severely alone. If he achieve a masterpiece, it will set 1,000,000 tongues a-wagging. Jealousy does not protrude its forked tongue at the artist who produces a commonplace painting. Whatsoever you write or paint or play or sing or build, no one will strive to surpass or to slander you unless your work be stamped with the seal of genius. Long, long after a great work or good work has been done, those who are disappointed or envious continue to cry out that it cannot be done. Spiteful little voices in the domain of art were raised against our own Whistler as a mountebank, long after the big world had acclaimed him its greatest artistic genius. Multitudes flocked to Beirut to worship at the musical shrine of Wagner, while the little group of those whom he had dethroned and displaced argued angrily that he was no musician at all. The little world continued to protest that Fulton could never build a steamboat, while the big world flocked to the riverbanks to see his boat steam by. The leader is assailed because he is a leader, and the effort to equal him is merely added proof of that leadership. Failing to equal or to excel, the follower seeks to depreciate and destroy, but only confirms once more the superiority of that which he strives to supplant. There is nothing new in this. It is old as the world and as old as the human passions: envy, fear, greed, ambition, and the desire to surpass. And it all avails nothing. If the leader truly leads, he remains the leader. Master poet, master painter, master workman, each in his turn is assailed, and each holds his laurels through the ages. That which is good or great makes itself known, no matter how loud the clamour of denial. That which deserves to live, lives. An ad for Cadillac, 1915. It's interesting, I guess, at this point to just to hear what a few of the truly greats in this industry, of which we are so fortunate to be part of, what they have said over the years. This one was, this question was delivered to David Ogilvy, and the question was, do you think advertising writing is more difficult than other kinds of factual writing? And he replied, one of the difficult things about writing advertising copy is it is so short. Print ads are short and TV commercials are short. You can write much more than 100 words. You can't write much more than 100 words in a TV ad, and that in itself, the brevity of the form, doesn't make it any easier to do, and so on. But really what he's saying is, it is difficult to be economic. It's difficult to throw out those precious words that you've penned. The interesting thing about David Ogilvy is probably the ad for which he's most famous is the ad for Rolls-Royce. And the headline reads, "At 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock." It's quite a famous ad in the annals of great ads. But he said this was one headline out of 26. When I wrote that ad for Rolls-Royce, I wrote 26 different headlines for it and then got half a dozen other writers from the agency to go over them and pick out the best one. Listen to what other people have got to say, even if you're as great as David Ogilvy. And interesting, 1 out of 26, that's another point. Don't get stuck on one idea. Don't fall in love with one headline, one idea. Your first idea will never be as good as your second idea. It can always be improved. This is not going to be an English lesson, because I'm certainly not qualified to do that. But I'm amazed the amount of copy, particularly print, and I'm settling on print here, of course, that's badly written. It's just bad grammar. One of the things that really distresses me somewhat is the overuse of the word "and" to begin a sentence or a paragraph. Just when you see another ad, just check down the copy and you find and. Okay. Grammar is a moving thing. It's not sort of totally locked in time, otherwise we would be speaking like, you know, back in the 17th century. So it does move along. The current thinking in the area of style is that, yes, you can use "and" to begin sentences, even though it's a conjunction. You shouldn't start it with a conjunction. Is that you shouldn't use it to excess. But my argument, I agree with that, but you'll see people using it to excess. And it's amazing too, you find bad spelling too. There's one ad that I was in two minds, but I didn't bring a slide of, that is got a bad spelling mistake, not just an error that can happen on transposition, but just simply bad spelling and bad grammar, riddled with it, from a very well-known agency. The other thing is ending sentences with prepositions. I mean, that's also bad. As I said, this is not a lesson in grammar, but yeah. This book, paperback, you should get it if you're going to be a writer, because it answers a whole heap of questions about use of current contemporary use of the English language as a writer. And it deals with things like "and" the whiches and the whats and the that's and the prepositions and things. It's just interesting to read. So it'll be well worth getting that, because there's so much of it. As I said today, this is sort of bad grammar. Once again, as a question to, there actually was a Leo Burnett who was quite a brilliant copywriter, and while he was alive he was asked this question, I guess because it's difficult to ask him when he's dead, but this question was about using vernacular and expressions like, and this is quite a famous campaign in the States at the time for Winston cigarettes, and the headline for the Winston campaign was "Winston tastes good like a cigarette should." Okay, it's bad grammar. That's very vernacular, of course. Where are we? Yeah, so it's basically bad grammar, but it's the vernacular, and you should use the vernacular. So if you've got to bend the rules of grammar for the purposes of contemporary communication, by all means do it, but don't do it for the wrong reasons. Now, what Leo Burnett said is that whenever he heard a phrase or a conversation which struck him as being particularly apt in expressing an idea or bringing it to life or accentuating the smell of it, the look of it, or anything else, or expressing any kind of an idea, he would scribble it down. He would keep notes. See, he's an observer of the human condition, Leo Burnett. And the guy, when he was doing this, he was quite an old guy. So he always remained a student. So he said, so his ear was always tuned for putting usual things in unusual relationships that get attention and aptly express an idea. So, always learning. David Ogilvy was asked the same question, the use of vernacular in copywriting, and indeed on that Winston thing. And David Ogilvy, who was, pretty fussy about his words, he said, look, it sounds okay to me, and it seems to me that people who see something wrong with that are just simply insufferable pedants. If you're trying to persuade people to do something or buy something, it seems to me you should use their language, the language they use every day, the language in which they think. We try to write in the vernacular. So write as one human being talks to another, and that means vernacular. It's David Ogilvy. You see so much, like once you start being aware of this, I'm probably doing you a great disservice, because you'll be looking now at copy and you'll be seeing all of these things. But you make your own mind up about them. The cadaverous cliche, copy is riddled with them. Such things as rich, satisfying, perfect for every occasion, refreshingly different, sun-drenched, rain-soaked, heavy as lead, weighed heavily on his shoulders. There's nothing wrong with the thought. It's just the expression. And what happens with cliches is that they just travel through someone's brain without leaving evidence behind that they've been there. If you take any of those thoughts, sun-drenched, in your own words, in your own thoughts, in your own vernacular, you can express that in a very memorable and engaging way. And probably with two other words, not just those two words. So I'm not building a case for verbosity. But they are so seductive because you'll have written them down before you realise you've written them. But that's all right, because then you get at it and start to edit and say, there's a cliche, there's another cliche, and get rid of them. Express it differently, memorably, your way, because cliches are not memorable. Another thing that I think is more in the cliche area than anything else is we've seen it in almost every ad. It says, see your nearest blogger retailer. Now, I mean, really, are you going to go to the one furthest away from you? I mean, it's the most redundant damn thing you can ever write in an ad. I mean, if anything needs editing in any ad, it is that. See your nearest blogger retailer. I mean, it's totally useless. There's also another thing you've got to be real careful of, and it is fashionable. It's fashionable in one or two she kind of agencies, and that is puns. Puns, I think you've got to be pretty brilliant to pull off a great pun. Because if you don't pull it off, I mean, it's the death penalty as far as I'm concerned. It really is. I mean, they are so bad. And another one is the analogy, okay? Writing analogies about things is just another lazy way in, okay? Like puns are cute and lazy. Analogies are cute and lazy. If you want to write cute and lazy copy, do that. Go for the cliches, go for the puns, go for the analogies. And the other one, this is an emerging kind of virus that I called the terminally tautological. And you've seen these things, they happen quite often. One is mass exodus. Now, have you ever seen an exodus of one person? Another wonderful one is uniquely different. Now, I mean, already you can get rid of 2 words out of 4 there. It's either mass, or it's an exodus, or it's unique, or it's different. But together they're not, okay? So just watch those things, because as I said, they're so seductive, They could be on the page before you realise it. But be alert for them. This is another shortcut that I think people think they can take, but highly dangerous. You know, where you go to seek your own style, you're looking for style ahead of the substance of what you're writing. If you write the substance and you write in your own words, you'll develop your style. Your style will find you, more to the point. But if you start writing trying to ape someone's style, you're just wasting your time. On this style aping, there's a particular guy around town, I won't name him of course because this is going on tape, who does storyboards, and he draws them in the style of a famous Australian artist. And I mean, I just think it's just hopeless. That instead of, why doesn't he just draw it the way he draws it? If you're going to get a famous, albeit now dead, artist, why? And that's the style seeker, not seeking the substance that's unique, fresh and original, which is what Bernbach's and the Ogilvies and the Burnett's constantly talk about, fresh, original. If you're fresh and original, you won't get into these cliches and all this other garbage. Now, what do those words have in common? Does anybody know? Does anybody know? Suspicious, critical, distrustful, lonely, baseless, bumps, barefaced. Negative. They could be, but that's not the answer to the question. No, well anyhow. They were words invented by Shakespeare. There's a whole heap of words, many more than that. But he invented those words because there were not words in the English language that he felt described what he wanted to describe. So they're all now part of the way we speak. So, what's my point here? I'm suggesting you invent words. And I'm not being fanciful here. Because there is another unwritten dictionary that we all know of, and why don't we explore the use of these words? Now, we know what disgruntled means, but look at the opposite of disgruntled. Gruntled, doesn't it? It even sounds wonderful. You know exactly how you feel if you felt gruntled. It would be wonderful to feel gruntled, okay? And consolate. You've been disconsolate, but why not consolate? And the height of style and elegance would be someone who would be kempt, as opposed to unkempt. And similarly, if they weren't kempt, you may well describe them as being shriveled. And if they're pretty good at what they do, they are ept. It even has that wonderful clipped economy with it. It even sounds like what's supposed to be ept. Impeccable. Impeccable is dripping with human failure, isn't it? And frailty. We're all bloody peccable at times. But see what I mean? They're wonderful words. You can put images to that. Why don't we start looking at this other dictionary we have in our genes? And these are just some of the words. out of these genes. Getting back to Leah Burnett, you know, you might say, is there some genetic thing about writers or art directors? And the question had to be asked of him, have you ever discerned any thread winding its way through these people? Do you see any qualities common to all of them, you know, these good writers? Or do you think copywriters are made up of all sorts and types? And Leah Burnett's view on it was they come from all sorts of places, okay? The best ones have a flair for expression, of putting down and believable things into new relationships. Be warm without being mawkish. And at the end of the day, if you don't get noticed, you don't have anything. You just have to be noticed. But the art is in getting noticed naturally without screaming or without tricks. Irrelevant tricks. David Ogilvy, the same question. If you notice any distinguishing characteristics which enabled you to pick out who's a good writer. He said at that time he'd been trying to find for years to find some common denominator which seems to apply to all good writers, and he came up with the conclusion there aren't any. But he said they have a certain quality, and that is a quality of curiosity. Go back to what I was saying earlier. You've got to develop a curiosity about the human condition. Develop a large vocabulary, even if you've got to make it up. Good visual imagery. You've got to be able to see things as well as looking. Bill Bernbach, same question. And he felt that one of the problems with the question was that we're kind of looking for a formula. You know, what makes a good writer? I mean, he felt that was dangerous and wrong. And if you're looking for a formula, a lot of people look for formulas because in many ways some people's training have come out of a sort of an analytical background, and analysts like to be able to write things down in numbers and they all add up, and therefore at the end of the recipe, if you do all things right, you've got a cake. But it kind of doesn't work this way. And he felt that was a bit dangerous because people could then think that they're going to be writers who shouldn't be writers. And he sort of gave a little bit of a story here, and like if a newspaper journalist, here they go again, was going to ask a brilliant novelist, you know, what time do you get up in the morning, and what do you have for breakfast, and what time do you start work, and when do you stop work? And Bernbach said the whole implication of this is if you eat your cornflakes at 6:30 and then take a walk and then take a nap and start working and stop at noon, you too can be a great writer. Okay? And it can't be that mathematical or precise. And that's one of the problems he felt with advertising at the time. And he felt that this leads to the worship of research. And I think this still prevails in the era of bad research as opposed to good research. Because good research is a great part of your learning in the business. And he said that we're all concerned about the facts we get and not enough concerned about how provocative we can make those facts to the consumer. So, as I said, I'm not going to end up with a fanfare or anything other than to say there are certain things that writers have learnt that are not written in books, that I think that in summary is just simply open yourself out to be as receptive as possible to what you might do, and don't spook yourself, because if you believe you can do it, you will do it. But if you get into that anxiety thing of, my God, there's a deadline, I may not do it, you won't do it. There's nothing sure, you won't do it. And that's about it. Any questions?
I just wanted to add a couple of books to that Ray didn't mention. Read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, that's great. And if you want to see grammar and how to have fun with it, and grammar sort of, when I was taught grammar, it was a horrible thing that I didn't want to learn, but read the poetry of E.E. Cummings, because that guy's amazing, the things that he does with grammar, brackets, full stops, punctuation, everything. And I remember in a poem that he wrote a couple of words that have always stuck with me, of words that he made up, and one was puddle wonderful. And I think, yeah, you can imagine that. That sort of sounds like something great. And mud luscious. I mean, they're made up. It's like, wow, great. And finally, if you haven't written anything before, even if you think you're an art director and you don't want to write, give it a go. Just sit down. This is 12 weeks where you can experiment. No one's going to judge you. You're not in a real job. You're not getting paid to do this. So take a chance, take a risk, write something, see how it goes. You might enjoy it. And you'll probably have a lot of fun doing it. And finally, if you know someone who's not here tonight, go home and call them so that they don't turn up tomorrow night. Thanks very much. See you next Tuesday night.